Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos ustedes. Gracias al doctor Dubey por estar con nosotros un día más en este curso. Doy las gracias a nombre de todo este público por tener al doctor Dubey aquí hoy con nosotros. Creo que en la sesión de ayer aprendimos muchísimo de la India, de un portentoso país que lucha en medio de esta financiarización por tener una vida soberana que le permita confrontar los problemas de una población, de una cantidad de seres humanos, porque a lo mejor luego población esconde que estamos hablando de seres humanos concretos, ¿no?, de carne y hueso, igualitos que nosotros, ni más ni menos, igualitos que nosotros, y que quieren también tener una vida útil y una vida feliz. Entonces le agradecemos mucho al doctor Dubey por estar aquí con nosotros, por venirnos a explicar las condiciones en que se ha desenvuelto su país y los principales desafíos que hoy tiene. Y por supuesto, estoy segura que todos ustedes se llevarán muchas lecciones, muchas preguntas respecto del mundo que hoy vivimos de una forma mucho más integrada, con una visión, intentar mirar al mundo no solamente en nuestra perspectiva occidental. Entonces, thank you very much, Dr. Dubey, for being with us today. We learned a lot for your conference yesterday, and we are very grateful for all the lessons that you are giving us, not only trying to break down our very West Occidental point of view, but also to take in account that the world it could be better if we think about sovereignty and about our own people.
Yes.
And thank you very much, Dr. Dubey, and we are very grateful, and we will be very attentive to your conference today.
Thank you. I think it was a pleasure interacting yesterday. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity to come and share my views and to learn as much as I share with you. And we are discussing today India and its diaspora as a phenomenon, as a economic phenomena, as a political phenomena, and as a post collapse of the Soviet Union. It is a phenomenon that you see across the world in a very different way. We would like to keep the same format. I speak for some time, and then you're most welcome to then comment and ask questions and share your views on that. We're discussing, as I said, India and its diaspora, and I'm sure all of you know what is diaspora. Diaspora has been defined variously but for the purpose of our discussion today, in short, for those of you who have not thought about this very categorically, we need to understand that diaspora refers to people who have moved away or who have migrated from one country to another country. So there has to be two countries, and there has to be movement of people from one country to other. This movement could be either a short term, but not as a tourist, or a long term for the purpose of earning livelihood. So if you go as a tourist, you go as a businessman and a professional for some meeting, it's not diaspora. It has to be a medium term and long term economic engagement with a country where they are migrating to. So you have two countries involved. One is what we call country of origin, and the other is the destination country, which we call host country. Like if Mexican go from Mexico to United States to earn their livelihood, either for some years or forever, Mexico becomes their country of origin. United States becomes the host country for Mexican diaspora, and people who have migrated from Mexico to United States become diaspora. What is also important that there had been movement of people from one country, one region to another, but all of them don't become diaspora. Only those movement, only those people become and qualified in the diaspora definition are those people who have some feeling, some urge to link with the country of origin. So suppose some people have migrated long ago and or in some time back and they have gone to another country. They have nothing to do with the country where from they came. There is no imagination, there is no feeling, there is no urge to link. Then they don't become diaspora. That means besides the fact that you have movement of people from one country to another for the livelihood, for the medium or long term, these people also must have some urge, some liking to connect with the country of origin, which is also called mother country. If it does not exist, then they are not diaspora. For example, Africans who migrated to different parts of the world, and in Latin America, in Caribbean, they came as slaves long ago, 200, 300 years ago, 200 years ago. Now that time, there was no African countries identifiable. So these African people who are in Latin America, who are in US, they really don't qualify to be a diaspora for simple reason because they don't have a country of origin. They have a continent of the origin. 55 countries, they don't know where from they came as slaves. And therefore, there was a problem of African connecting with Africa, and therefore the Africa as a continent, when it got united under African Union, it then took steps to say, okay, we know you don't know which country you came from, but we are one. African Union is one like European Union. So please try to connect and do something for African Union. So they gave them a region of origin. And so the point is that we must understand when we talk about diaspora, certain people who have moved to another country don't automatically become diaspora. And if there is a movement of people within the same country, they also don't become diaspora. They remain migrant, internal migrant, domestic migrant. So these are the few things that I wanted to say. The diaspora is a phenomena in social sciences, for economics, for politics. It's an old phenomena that academicians are engaged, and the oldest diaspora is the Jewish diaspora, who migrated from Jerusalem to different parts of the world, as you know, long ago. And whenever they meet now, like we say good morning, they say, we meet till we meet next year in Jerusalem. That's the way they say good morning to each other. Till we meet next year in Jerusalem. And that the practice from 1 AD and before that when they got scattered all around the world. So the oldest diaspora which wants to link with the place of origin is Jewish diaspora. Then you have Albanian diaspora, you have several other diaspora. And in that older diaspora, you have another which is called Indian diaspora, which is also very old. Large number of Indians during ancient times went to different parts of the world, not as a conqueror, but more as a preacher, as a teacher, as a religious reformer. And therefore you find the entire China, entire Korea, entire Japan, most of them became Buddhist. Buddhism originated in India, and all the preachers and leaders went to different parts of the world. And they got settled down. There was quite a sizable number of people who moved. But they lost touch with India, they became local, and that's how they are called lost diaspora, because they have no link, no urge, no separate identity from the host country. Diaspora as a word was not used during the post-Second World War period till the globalization started. The reason was that soon after the Second World War, you know, in 1944, the State of Israel was established by the diaspora. And this was seen as totally unacceptable phenomena by Arab world, which said that they have come and captured this place and they have made it their homeland, they have removed the local population, and this is not acceptable. And therefore diaspora is dangerous. At the first time it was seen as a people who migrate, they migrate out of distress. And secondly, in this post-Second World War, it was seen as a very unacceptable phenomenon. Diaspora can come, claim certain area, because thousands of years ago they went from there, established their homeland, removed people from there. So nobody was using the word diaspora. And the diaspora was not used in any other country context very widely. During those days, even for India, we used the term overseas Indians for diaspora. We used the terms Indian settlers. We used the term mini India. And diaspora was rejected because of those associations. It's only when the China for the first time started using people of Chinese origin in the 80s in order to mobilize investment in China, when it opened up its economy, that the diaspora and people of a country started being seen as a positive thing. But it still remained confined to China. It was not opened up. It was only after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the globalization started, the diaspora was seen as a positive factor in international relation, in development, and something the social science must engage with. Earlier, the diaspora study was largely to study whether Mexicans are discriminated or they are integrated, whether they are allowed or not in the United States, where Indians are allowed into different countries or discriminated or not. But now with the Chinese experience, when the globalization wanted to bring the world together, because there was just one world, there was no Eastern Bloc, there was no Soviet Bloc. Everyone had to link with the developed economy. Then in that, diaspora was also seen as a mega mobilizer, which will work to effect globalization, which will contribute in terms of that network building of movement of people, movement of businesses, movement of money, movement of technology, movement of professionals. And therefore, diaspora was recognized as a mega trend in globalization. What made diaspora possible from settlers community, overseas community, is also several other factors. The factors like the border after globalization became much more porous. During Cold War phase, the borders were sovereignty were too tight. You cannot move people. The border control was strict. Foreigners were rejected. But soon, when the globalization became, the money became borderless. You don't know whose money is in New York Stock Exchange, whose money is in Singapore, whose money in German exchange. So the money, of course, became borderless. And since you need to bring the world together, there was no need to keep people in the camp of Eastern Bloc or the capitalist bloc. It made people's movement easier. The border became much more friendly for movement of the people. You needed labor, you needed professional at a cheaper price to go on with the global business, which has expanded quite far compared to the previous. Because now the expanse of the business, the spread of the business is global. It's no more confined to a limited number of camp-following countries. The development in technology also made diaspora important factors. People who had migrated long ago, they never thought they will ever see their country of origin. Indians who have migrated 200 years ago as indentured workers all over the world in huge number. We'll come to that later. They realized that they will never be able to go to India. It's impossible. And they have the image of India, which was 200 years old. That's what passed on from generation to generation. But internet, which made the communication cost-free, the cheaper civil aviation movement, the TV, the telecommunication, you can see the world sitting in your drawing room. And that made the urge of the people to link with the country and with the place where from they came. And this became very powerful urge. And therefore, one of the crucial things in diaspora that I was saying earlier, the urge to link was earlier not present because of the tight border control, because of the very expensive means of communications, because of the fact that there were no technology available to know about the place where from they came. And all these things changed, then diaspora linkages became stronger. And therefore you have countries after countries who tried to adopt policy to make their diaspora urge to link with their country possible. There was a very liberal and very regular use of the diaspora as a word for the people who have migrated from one country. So you can use diaspora without making it feel parochial, without making it feel it is unacceptable or distressing dispersal of the people. And therefore, you find the diaspora connect started happening all over the world. As I said, it was also because of the changes that globalization brought in, also because of the Chinese experiences of Chinese roles in globalization, and also because people wanted to move and connect. And the collapse of the Soviet Union had established that despite a long communist rule, the basic identity issue had not disappeared from the Soviet Union also. So when the Soviet Union burst out, you find many ethnic assertions in different countries. And they were seen as very intrinsic. They were not seen as something which had been created, and if you create a different society, if you ignore it for a certain number of years, it will disappear, which didn't happen. Neither religious nor ethnic. And the diaspora was also one of those ethnic connect. So because of all these regions, diaspora became important. So now, I'm coming to a case study of Indian diaspora. And it is an important case study. Globally, it is seen as important case study for following regions. One, India had a very strong policy of dissociating with its diaspora till the globalization arrived. As I said, India had very historical diaspora formation, but it has a very strong policy to say, no, we have nothing to do with you people. You have gone, we wish you good luck. You be part of that country, and you are the citizen of that country. That's it, full stop. But in 90s, when India decided for different economic region to link with diaspora, and it became possible to link with diaspora because of the globalization, because of the factor that I discussed, because of the Chinese experience, because diaspora acquired a more secular connotation, India took a U-turn in its policy, and that policy is seen worldwide as one of the most successful policy of diaspora linkages. And therefore, this case studies of India is important to understand that how diaspora linkage can be affected by a state in a few years, of course, for economic region, and now it has moved from economic region to larger region of a strategic region of soft power utilization. There are several other things. So that's why I think if we discuss the Indian diaspora and India, you will have some understanding of your own diaspora that you would like to know. What constitutes Indian diaspora? There are two major components in Indian diaspora. One is the old diaspora, which went from 6th century BC onward, when Buddhism started crystallizing, when Buddha was born in India, 6th century BC, and went to different parts of the world, China, Japan, Korea, and many other parts of the world. And many of these preachers went in large number and got settled down, but they are more or less lost diaspora. There were also good number of businessmen who went to different part of the world, and they got settled around that. And when Vasco da Gama went to India from Portugal, first time, the West, when it was trying to discover India under, in 15th century, he met on the way on African coast. If you have the map, you will see from Europe, you go along the African coast, and then from Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, then you go further towards India, and then further towards Java, Sumatra, and China. All along, he says that he was guided by the presence of Indian merchants who were settled along the coast. So when he went and discovered India, he was from Portugal, if you don't know, and at that point of time in 15th century, his cost of going there, without any guide he went. It was first time that someone had gone as a merchant. When he returned to Portugal, when he brought in all those spices from India, which was required for consumption of meat during the peak winter those days, the return was 60 times. And then there was a huge number of exodus, ultimately establishing East India Company, which colonized India subsequently. Anyway, the point which I'm trying to make, that Indian merchants were spread all across the different part of the world, and they were doing business. But the bulk of the old Indian diaspora, besides these preachers, besides these merchants, is what we call indentured diaspora. Indentured diaspora was a professional category of people who were cane cutter in India, because India was producing sugar in huge quantity during colonial time. So when the slavery was abolished, the labor left the field all over the world. And there was a need to replace that labor with another labor which was willing to work. And in that, all these planters, all these Western planters then started recruiting labor from different parts of the world. The first batch was from Europe itself, the European indentured worker, then there were the Chinese, then there were a good number of Japanese, and all the Japanese that you see today in Latin America are these people who came as indentured workers during that point of time. Most of them failed. They didn't succeed as a successful replacement of slave labor, as a successful indentured worker. They rebelled, they didn't like the work, they moved to other area. They served the contract period of 5 years, which was the indentured labor contract of 5 years. And then again it was a huge shortage. It's only Indian who succeeded worldwide as indentured worker. And that's happened because in India during that time, among all the profession, the best profession was agriculture. So anyone who was working in agriculture felt really proud, though the returns were not much. It's more or less something like what was in 70s in India and 80s, that even if your return is not high in education, if you are an IT professional, then you are excited about your life. You will do even at a lower cost, because in the local value system, you are a software engineer, which is highly valued. So everyone wanted to become software engineer, very bulk production of IT workers, very low paid, high in demand all over the world. And I think the similar situation existed when the indentured workers from India were hired for cane cutting. They were trained for that, they were willing for that, and the indentured provision also said that after 5 years they were supposed to be returned at the cost of the recruiting agency to India. But if they decide themselves to stay back, they will be given a piece of land for agriculture, and they can do both second indenture and the production in their own agricultural land. And that excited them again. It's like the IT workers coming here, becoming IT employee, and establishing and starting all the ventures. Hotmail, the email that came for the first time, started by Indian engineer who had failed several times in India. But somehow he became a successful IT worker in USA, and then he moved on to establish his own, which Microsoft acquired long after he experimented with free email facility. So there were several like that. So these indentured workers therefore went not just to the British colony, but they were, like the computer workers today, again entered into different other colonial power treaties. Suriname was under Dutch, Martinique, Guadeloupe, all of them were under French, under what was then called a body shopping, where the European government entered into British government, French, Dutch, to get these workers for their colonies. And the quota was fixed, and the European supplier. So it was something like what you're having the body shopping right now, that even if you have contracted, even if there is no work on the project, these IT workers who come from India, they are made to sit, and that is called sitting on the bench. That means they are unemployed. But the companies may pay money so that they don't go. Similar situation existed at that point of time. The point I am making is, because of their very high demand, these workers were supplied all over the world. And 60% of 25 million strong Indian diaspora, each indentured worker, spread in more than 200 countries. And these three, the merchants, the indentured workers, the preachers, they form the part of the old diaspora. Then there is another component in Indian diaspora which is called new diaspora. New diaspora is the one which went after independence of India. 1947, India gets independence, soon after the Second World War. And India had a mixed economy, as we discussed yesterday. A core sector of the economy was planned by government. So the education, agriculture was the main area. So you have establishment of top engineering college, medical colleges, universities, all fully at the cost of a state. Free education, top quality education. Many of these institutions were established with the Western countries' collaboration. So all the engineering colleges, what is called IIT, had either collaboration with American or with British or with French, all over the world they had. And when the graduates passed out, instead of working within India, they migrated to these countries. And they were in very high in demand. And therefore, you have very high skilled, the top level skilled worker moving to different part of the Western world. So all the doctor, engineer, computer scientist, they all went to all these places, and India again had to develop another sets of engineering college with condition that if you study here, you have to work for this many years here. After they saw that the brain drain has taken place, all the best had gone out. So you have a very sizable population of these people who are totally state-of-the-art trained people in India, and they moved out. There is another category of people in new diaspora which is completely semi-skilled or unskilled, and they have gone to Gulf region. You have 6 million people of Indian origin in Gulf countries. If you have election in these countries, they will form government in all these countries. They are in such a big number. And they are low paid, unskilled worker, but they still get much higher than what they get in Indian situation. So you have a good number of them going over there. And they are in demand because unlike what you have the supply from Pakistan and some other countries, they prove to be a very peaceful people. They don't nag, they don't create problems there. And so they are again very high in demand. They contribute huge amount of money as remittances to India, because in developed countries, you have a chance of getting green card, becoming citizen, and after one generation, you become local. There, even if you remain for many generations, there is no possibility of ever becoming local. You can't get citizenship, so you have to go back only. So they send all the money back home, 100% surplus. They put it in Indian bank. They have no option. So they are another component of new Indian diaspora. So for Indian diaspora, we have two components, old and new. And they differ in terms of their occupation, their skill, their presentation. The old diaspora that went as indentured worker, which constitutes 60%, went around 1834 and later on. And you know, they are 180 years, 150 years, they are four or five generations. They were not in touch with India, so they had become completely local, but all of them have become very affluent and significant proportion in their countries, a very affluent minority. Similarly, this diaspora which came to West are also very affluent. And just to give you some statistic about Indian diaspora in West, they are around 3 million, less than 1% of US population. But this less than 1% population occupies 13% of the graduate seats in the United States. This less than 1% of diaspora has an average income which is more than the double of the average income of the white population. And 150,000 Indians still come every year to USA. All top skilled people who have graduate and postgraduate in technical area. Quite a good number of them go back, but still good number of them stay back. So you understand the diaspora, small minority, very affluent. South Africa, 1%. Not 1%, 1.1 million out of 45 million people in South Africa went as indentured worker. They are more advanced than the white population which ruled for 3 centuries in professional and educational category. So you find they are very, very affluent minority in most of the country. And this is the presence of Indian diaspora in 70s and 80s. And as I told you, India had a policy since 1930 onward, when it was still under colonial rule. It became independent in 1947, but it has a major political formation, Indian National Congress, which was the major political party which remained in power for 45 years after independence. That party was established in 1885. And 1930 onwards, when it was fighting for independence, it has a policy: if you go, become citizen of other country, you have our good wishes, and we urge you to become a good citizen of the country where you have gone. Prove yourself. Be loyal to the place where you have gone. And this was also partly because India was facing a very strong resistance in South Africa, where, as I said, there is a 1 million plus population of Indian origin, and Gandhi was fighting for them. Mahatma Gandhi, he became Mahatma in South Africa. In 1893, he had established Indian National Congress to fight for Indians over there. And British were very racist because they were looking at the interest of only British people, who were a tiny minority, and bulk of the majority population was black or Indians. And they were treated as subhuman beings, not as human beings. So political, economic, military, administrative, every control was with tiny population from the British diaspora. And therefore India was opposed to that from 1893, when Indian National Congress was established, that you have to treat all human beings equal. And the diaspora connection does not entitle British government to side only with this unacceptable minority rule and discrimination of the majority. And therefore India had a policy: we will not follow the British policy. We will not follow the policy of racist affiliation with diaspora and discriminate. We will treat majority community, we will treat all people of the country where diaspora is located as equal for us. We will have no preference because they are just diaspora, because we are not following British racist policy. So in order to distinguish from the racist policies of colonial master which they followed either in South Africa, where you know the most available practice of apartheid based on racial discrimination. Every race has a different capacity, has to be treated differently. That policy was supported by Britain and many European countries. In Rhodesia, which is Zimbabwe, the British supported unilateral declaration of independence 1965. A small, tiny minority of white British diaspora took over from the Britons, saying that you don't have to democratize here, you go back. We will take care of this country, and ruled in 1980. So India has a policy saying, no, you have gone there, we have nothing to do. And therefore the diaspora was abandoned by India. globally. And that's why I'm saying that the success of Indian diaspora policy is not because it has become a success and it has a long diaspora over centuries, but it has been done in 15 years. A very successful engagement, which is one of the most successful engagement in the world. And the Israelis are complaining that Indian diaspora is replacing them in terms of its lobbying power in the Capitol Hill in the United States. And it's just a recent engagement. So what happens? 19 up to 80, same policy. Soviet Union collapses. As we discussed yesterday, India had to transit. I'll take slightly longer. India had to transit from mixed economy to private economy under globalization. And transition is always painful. Economic transition, the state loses all the resources. And it is at the verge of collapse. And in 1991, India was at such a verge of collapse, as we discussed yesterday, that it didn't have $1 or $2 billion to pay for 3 weeks of its import bill for essential commodities. And then it didn't know what to do. It emptied its central bank, Reserve Bank of India, airlifted 2 plane loads of gold, put in Bank of England as mortgage, so that Bank of England can provide for 2 or 3 weeks of import guarantee. That's it. And when you are such a desperate situation, when you are going down the drain, when you know that nothing is working, then you start re-looking at all your options. You also take up things which was a taboo for you to do that, if that helps. And then the diaspora by then had become very affluent, very important all over the world, as we discussed, because of minority situation. Minority usually excel in every country simply because they work hard and they have to excel. And Indian had worked and excelled all over the world, and then it wanted, can the diaspora help India just to put their fixed deposit, which they have huge amount, into a Bank of India? And Indian bank will not use that money, but Indian credit worthiness will increase. It will have 4 or 5 billions parked in Indian bank, and it will not be declared a bankrupt state. So at that point of time, for pure economic compulsion, when Indian economy was at the worst stage, they tried to look towards diaspora by reversing its policy of active dissociation with diaspora. And naturally, when they approached the diaspora responded as expected, saying, hello, who are you? You never recognize us. When have you started linking with us? India has always trumpeted its dissociation with diaspora. No, we have nothing to do with diaspora. Diaspora is a citizen of other country. We have complete dissociation with them. We are not British, we are not European. We are Indians. We don't have racial preference. If you are a citizen of other country, you are a citizen of the other country. And now when India wanted to link with them, then naturally they rejected. But then India also knew that they also have an inner desire, because of the globalization things, to link with India, to have linkage with Indian culture. Because Indian diaspora, despite long and short stay outside, has maintained its Indian identity, culture, some of the values that they brought in from India. The family structures is something that they had always maintained. The value of, some of the value associated with family. And therefore, India thought, though they are angry, they are upset, but let us try and make out what we can do for them. So it established a commission which went to 40 countries, mapped their expectation, tried to know in what condition they would like to link with India and help India, because they are Indians, and if India goes down the drain, it's a wrong image for them as Indian. So they have also urged that India remains okay, it doesn't become a bankrupt country. And after that commission came back, then India announced a set of measures. And there were quite a good number of them. And it segmented the diaspora, old diaspora, new diaspora in developed country, new diaspora in Gulf region, old diaspora in neighboring region, old diaspora in Caribbean, which is far off. So what they want. So accordingly, it rolled out several policies after the commission visited all these countries and came by mapping their expectations. And when it started unrolling this policy, then diaspora again jumped to link with India. Because it realized that it's just not a soft talk. There is a hard policy decision which India is taking, which could not have been taken in India earlier. So in 1991, when the Bank of England received 2 plane loads of gold from India, India launched an Indian diaspora bond. And it was immediately sold out for $2 billion. Then subsequently, India also launched again an India Resurgent Bond, which was subscribed, I think, in 1998 it was launched for $2 billion, but then it was oversubscribed by $2.26 billion. So that year, the $2 billion bond had a subscription of $4.26 billion. Then again, in 2000, it launched India Millennium Bond, which was again for $2 billion. And it was oversubscribed by $3.5 billion. So the bond, India Millennium Bond, became for $5.5 billion in that years. So for the economic region, India changed its policy, segmented its diaspora policy, gave some of the things which diaspora wanted. For example, it said it will give them a PIO card for the old diaspora. Those who had gone 180 years ago, up to 5th generation, they can claim a People of Indian Origin card. If they get that, they don't have to have visa to go to India. They can pay the same prices as any Indian pay in all school and colleges. There is no foreigner price. Other than agricultural land, they can buy any property. They can open bank account. They can open businesses. Everything they can do. They can enter into professional area which were debarred for foreigner, but if they have a PIO card, they will be treated like Indian, except voting rights and agricultural properties on which a very large number of poor people of India are dependent. And these PIOs have huge amount of money, so it was kept out of them. They should not make ranches out of the land where large number of people find their livelihood, sustenance on that. So the voting right and agricultural property were debarred, all other things were open. And they jumped on that. For developed countries, India then introduced OCI card, Overseas Citizen of India. Again, it does not give voting rights, but it gave most of the rights that they wanted. And then there was demand for election, voting and all that. So that's all also getting discussed. The other was the government of India then announced, when the PIO card was announced, that every year government of India will meet the diaspora from across the world, all the top achievers, from 7th to 9th of January. So you have a huge jamboree of all these diaspora achievers from the world. 3,000 to 5,000 of them come every year to meet them. Then there is a reward, honor for these diaspora people, that if you have been achiever, contributed to the local economy, local politics, then government of India will give you Bharat Samman, which is the highest award the government president will confer on them. So a large number of them got that. There were several measures. On every airport, there will be a desk, a counter for PIO, for NRI, for OCI citizens. So you just move in. Because that they were symbolic things that earlier we were dissociating. Now we are just hugging you, preferring you. So all these measures led for diaspora emerging in terms of supporting India for the financial crisis that it has. Soon after India launched all those bonds and diaspora oversubscribed, India, after 2 years of World Bank IMF loan for a structural adjustment, it left those money. It went with the diaspora money to effect the same kind of changes, same kind of reform, but not under the condition, under the vigilance, under the supervision of the World Bank and IMF, because it was very unpopular in India, World Bank, IMF as institution. And it also paced it, sequenced it the way that the poor are not adversely affected. So the reforms were paced and sequenced differently from the World Bank and IMF. For example, no agricultural subsidy was cut. No subsidy to the poor was cut. The health sector kept getting this thing. And they were the last to be cut when the alternative private mechanism was put into place. And therefore, the sequencing and pacing was different. Even insurance till today has not been opened up beyond 49% of equity by the foreign companies, because large number of people are insured by the state insurance, and it is compulsory for them to provide that. So the point I'm making, the diaspora came as an economic support for India at that point of time, and of course now India has more than $350 billion which is parked as a reserve fund and doesn't know what to make use of this. It is a liability. The second thing is, the diaspora remits $70 billion every year. Largest diaspora remittance in the world to India, more than the China. And that's a money that comes every year from the diaspora. India also tried to utilize diaspora for mobilizing foreign direct investment. As you know, under reform, you need to have money coming from outside, make investor-friendly climate. But diaspora didn't succeed as it succeeded in China. Its investment never exceeded more than 11%, because everyone came directly to India, whereas in case of China, it touched 64% in 80s, because diaspora was required, even for non-diasporic people, to join hand to go in China to business. So that became a diaspora investment. India is an open country, English-speaking country. Anybody can go and do business. The law and rules are very clear. And there is no restriction, no surveillance on the people as you have in China. And therefore, diaspora was not required in India, which was the case in China. If you go without diaspora, you won't be able to understand anything in Chinese system. So diaspora engagement was economic. We don't need diaspora anymore for parking their money because we have enough reserve. We pay good amount of money on their fixed deposit, and if you can't make use of it, it is a liability, which is happening right now. Then they are not successful as a FDI investor. Then what do we do with the diaspora engagement that has gone in such a high speed? We use diaspora now as a strategic soft power, that when India has developed global aspiration, want to surface globally, want to hold hand, want to be seen, diaspora is one of the channels which India is utilizing as a soft power for its global outreach. And that's where diaspora and India engagement in 15 years is seen as a very successful story. That where to take this engagement is a challenge. It's not a challenge whether we can engage diaspora or not. Thank you.
Bueno, vamos a seguir el mismo formato que seguimos ayer. Vamos a elaborar las preguntas o comentarios y el profesor va a ir dando respuesta a cada una de ellas porque tenemos tiempo para hacerlo de esta manera. Les recuerdo que tienen que hablar al micrófono porque estamos grabando la sesión para YouTube, entonces es importante al menos que se oiga la pregunta que se le hace al profesor. Gracias.
Thank you very much for the very interesting talk. I wanted to know your opinion on sort of a theme of the earlier part of the talk, and whether you think that this new diversified, multinational, maybe even approaching post-national internet-based culture, especially amongst the younger generations, will be a counterbalance or a way to confront the dominant corporate-based culture that we're seeing advance ever more, or do you think it will be it will weaken cultural defenses, whereas perhaps more national-based cultures would be stronger bulwarks? Thank you.
I think diaspora engagement is a part of the globalization. There would not have been such a strong prevalence of diaspora engagement across different countries to position their diaspora, to prepare their diaspora for engagement, if there was no globalization. And the question that you ask in terms of corporate culture or national cultural defenses, I think will be answered not so much by diaspora engagement by the young people, but more by globalization. And you get your answer by that. The globalization will lead to a spread of dominant cultures across the world, what we call corporate culture or whatever you call that. And if it does beyond a point, then you also have very violent resistance, opposition to that. And so it does dilute, but it also leads to very strong resistance if it completely try to dilute the local culture. Yes, so both are present here. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Dubey. One brief question. Can you talk to us about can we talk about an Indian diaspora in Latin America, if there exists one? But can you talk to us about it? Thank you.
Indian diaspora in Latin America, a very important component. You know, Latin America has quite a good number of plantation area where slaves were providing the draft manpower. And when the slavery was abolished in many of these countries, indentured workers were brought in from different parts of the world. But the most successful one and the most numerous one were Indian diaspora. And therefore you find in British Guyana, at the time of independence in around 1968 or so, there were 51% Indian population. The others were minority. In Trinidad and Tobago, you have around 45% Indian populations. The black population is less than 40%. Others are mixed populations. In Suriname, you have very sizable Indian diaspora. In Jamaica, you have around 5 to 6% Indian diaspora. So you have quite a good, in Barbados, and you have a smaller number in many other countries. In Mexico, I think it's just 2,000, and it's not a big diaspora. And different part you have Indian diaspora in Latin America. This diaspora has two major problems. compared to the other diaspora. One was that it was so far off from India. Forget about even today, it took 24 hours for me to reach here by flight. With those days, if they have been shipped once to come here, it's very difficult to connect with India again so easily. So they were far off from India, and therefore naturally they couldn't get Indian connect as much as the diaspora in the neighboring African region or Southeast Asia region had got. And when India decided to trumpet its diaspora policy of dissociation, the worst victims were Indians. Everywhere the blacks who were a minority or of the similar number in all these countries, then they realized they have been abandoned by Indians, Indian government. The Indian government will not support them. And the black empowerment in United States was so powerful that you have all these leaders from the Caribbean countries or Latin America getting connected with the black empowerment movement in the United States. So you have George Padmore from Jamaica, we have William Sylvester from Trinidad and Tobago, you have Dubois from the same region, and all of them were acting. Marcus Garvey, who was in news recently, 2 months ago, United States. All of them were so powerful leaders of these countries, and they were connected with the black empowerment movement in Europe and United States. So the blacks became very powerful. So much so, 51% population, decolonization takes place in British Guyana. Indian could not think of coming to the power against the black population for 40 years. Similarly, Trinidad and Tobago, they could not think of coming to the powers. In 1995, when I was there for a seminar on black diaspora, and the topic was why, when a diaspora ceases to be a diaspora, I was giving a paper. There was a paper on Indian diaspora, and the presenter said, we don't talk about Indian diaspora because the rivers of blood will flow. The country having majority Indian population. You know, so it was so much abundant, marginalized, unconnected with India that even when India started its pro-diaspora policy, these people were left out because of the distance. When India introduced the OCI card, the one country that was debarred was Trinidad and Tobago, and they created a lot of, hue and cry. That's why we are being abandoned. We already have dual citizenship. So Trinidadian at that point of time could become a citizen of Trinidad and US, but India said, no, they are too far off. So there is an Indian diaspora, and it is a different experience of decolonization, different experience of finding its legitimate place in democratic society, which you have in many Latin American countries. And of course, a very raw deal from India because of the distance.
Thank you for your interesting speech. And my question goes in a way of more like a political rights of these diasporas that have come to live in India. So is there any kind of social movement or mobilization in which the people that's living in India want to get the right to vote? And the second question, it goes like, are there any identity conflicts due to diasporas that have come to live in India?
Yes, I think the first question is the political rights of diaspora in India, that what right these people get in India?
No, mainly...
Yes, I'll repeat. Yes. You just say?
Yeah, like mainly if there's any social movement from these groups that have come to live in India in which they want to get the political rights, mainly voting.
Yes, yes. And the second one?
Oh, yes. And the second one is there any identity conflict? I mean, like among minority groups, in which, like, just because of the fact that they are diasporas coming to India, is there any kind of discrimination or identity conflict?
Okay, for political rights, how diaspora has positioned itself, as I said, there was a policy of dissociation, so diaspora did not position itself to link with India. But there was always a urge within diaspora to link with India. But it couldn't get fructified because India has a policy of dissociation with diaspora. In 1989, for the first time, US, soon after the collapse of the Soviet Union, which collapsed in 1990, had set up a group of Indian diaspora. And an organization called Global Organization of People of Indian Origin, GOPIO, was established in New York. And that group tried to bring people of Indian origin in order to engage India that it must change its policy of dissociation. Now, and I said that India itself soon after 2 years had a very acute economic crisis, very strong imperative to link with diaspora for its money. Then it encouraged and funded GOPIO to become stronger. And therefore, you have these people who then mobilize people of Indian origin across the world. So diaspora didn't have just spoke and will relationship, which is, suppose, Indians in USA linking with India, but they established linkages with Indians in Caribbean, Indians in Malaysia, Indians in Fiji, Indians in Australia, and that web relationship is what they want to utilize to negotiate with India, that you give us this, this, this. Then the diaspora will support you what you want from us. So it's not just a sentimental relationship, it's also a reciprocal, negotiated, mutually beneficial relationship. So they have asked for certain things, they have got. Every year when India meets its diaspora on 7th to 9th of January, they come with a list of demands. That we want this, this, this to be done. And government of India has to make at least 2 or 3 demands every year, saying that yes, we have put system in place, we have accepted this one. So it's a negotiated. Current demand is they want voting right, they want to contest election for member of parliament, they want to become minister. So, but these are the list of demand, and gradually they are moving towards that. So it's a process which is going on. In terms of conflict, no, because okay, so the second thing is when the, just let me answer the second question, I'll come to your. So the second question was, is there conflict between the diaspora group which comes to India? No, not now, but when India was having the policy of dissociation, there was a kind of resentment because all these people who were educated in Indian top educational institutions left India, came to all the developed countries. They were called NRI, non-resident Indians, because they didn't have the citizenship in these countries to begin with. And they were resented in India because they had a value that everything is so chaotic in India, so dirty, so bad in India. And when they used to visit India, they used to assume air. They had attitude towards locals. They used to look down the institution from which they have gone. So there was a kind of, dissociation. And so these non-resident Indians were called not required Indian in India. They were also called not really Indians. You know, so these attitudes were there. But once this engagement process began, and when they started coming, negotiating, and the door was opened for them, then the floodgate has opened. So there is no such problem. What is important in your context is that India is a very diversified country. It has 350 languages. It has all the religions. It has different regions. It's more diversified than entire Europe European Union put together. Entire Africa put together, 54 countries. So when the diaspora goes, it largely links with the place, with the community from where it has gone. So it feels at home rather than feels at conflict with that. So if you are from Malaysia, then even if you have 7 flights a day from Malaysia to Tamil Nadu, you will not find a seat if you don't book at least 2 weeks in advance, because they go only to Tamil Nadu. And so therefore there is no conflict. They have more acceptance and homogeneity where they connect. Yes.
Okay, I would like to make another question. It's just 34 minutes ago, The Economist make a Twitter, and it says, Donald Trump, and he cited, is a big fan of Hindu, Sikh, and a big fan of India. And so The Economist asks, are Indians big fans of his? So that question will be for you.
Yes. Yes, I think traditionally Indians had been government and people largely, and I must qualify that a statement that not even 0.01% Indian will ever bother who is going to be US president. Not 0.01% will bother, but 0.01 which bothers, they were fan of Democrats all along. For historical reason, because it's supposed to be more migrant friendly, more labor friendly, where Indian goes. And it always had a very unfriendly relation with USA. Fan of USA, but very unfriendly relation, because we were more closer to Russia, we were more non-aligned, and in American setting, you are either with them or against them. They don't accept in between. So they treated us against them because we are not with them. We are a non-aligned country. So there was a relationship which was not comfortable. So despite being a fan, nothing has come out between India and USA, which India can say, yes, you have done something for us. First time, you have a person whom you can compare as ideologically oriented as Trump, and that was Junior Bush. You know, as people didn't rate him very high on his intellectual capacity, as they don't do it for the Trump. But when Bush was there, and Indians and India, that 0.001% who bothers about USA, had supported all the Democrats all through. He said, no, India must be treated differently. It's a very important country, democratic country. It's a country which can distinguish itself from the China, and it's world's largest democracy, a huge population, English-speaking population. We cannot treat India the way we had been treating. And India was also not prepared with him but he rang up the Chinese who were opposing India, that India must be treated as a nuclear club member despite not signing NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. You know, US had imposed sanctions in 1998 when India tested atomic weapon. And nobody knew in India that there is a US sanction. So Bush said, what we are doing all this? Remove the sanction and make India a member of the nuclear club, despite the fact that he doesn't sign nuclear proliferation treaty. So he delivered. And for the first time, Indian diaspora in USA did very strong lobby, which the Jewish, the Israeli opposed, the Jewish lobby opposed, saying that they have replaced them in the Capitol Hill. to make sure Bush delivers. So there is a wrong perception, as I said yesterday, in India, that less intellectually developed people and people from Conservative Party would do more for India than the Democrat Hillary Clinton will do. So there is some statement by, I think Trump knows that, and he made some statements that he's not against Indian. He openly said that. He said that, yes, we are against Pakistan, which India loves. We are against China, is the enemy number one, which India loves. And he said he was accused to be soft on Russia. And then India is more comfortable with that position. So what more can India ask for? And so he's giving to India what Indians are not even asking for. So therefore, there is a greater appreciation. And what went against Hillary is that she had been very diplomatically, very proactive Indians. Yes, India must come to the Security Council. We will take on China if it doesn't do that. India must get all the support from US, all the technology. But when the WikiLeaks came out recently, it showed all the notings by her, which is anti-Indian. It said, one of them said, oh, Security Council seat, India is a self-appointed front runner. We have nothing to do with that. So some of the statements which came through WikiLeaks then made Indians feel, look, she doesn't mean what she says. And Trump had that advantage of talking what India loves to hear. Yes.
Maybe to divide also between China and India.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes. I personally don't like Trump, but I'm telling you. Yes. This lady has seen something in the back.
Please, which is the ministry that is leading all the issues of the diaspora, and if the other ministry that I've heard about is about training semi-skilled people in India to prepare them to go out. That's something that excites me very much. I would like to know a little bit more about it.
Yes. When the diaspora policy changed, what was good about India is that there is a political consensus on the foreign policy matters, by and large, not 100%. There was a feeling that it's the Hindu nationalists who are trying to rope in diaspora for revival of Hinduism. But soon it was realized that those who were opposed to that, they were also proactive for diaspora. So the Congress Party and Bharatiya Janata Party, two political parties which came to government with in opposition of each other, both of them tried to compete and do more for diaspora than the other. So the BJP government, which is more Hindu-based party, was accused to be very proactive on diaspora, and the diaspora policy was handled by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then the Congress government came, it accused BJP of being pro-Hindu, but then it established a separate ministry for diaspora with a separate high-level minister for that. And it did all the policy through that ministry. There was a conflict, tough war between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Ministry. It was not really working because bureaucrats have very strong, tough war. They don't allow other ministry to come into their area. And diaspora was largely foreign affairs matters, and the diaspora ministry always had tough time reaching out to diaspora. So when the next BJP government came recently under Modi, 2 years ago, it abolished the ministry. The day one it came, it abolished the ministry. And it has established a separate ministry of skill development, where the low-skilled people of India and low-skilled people who are going outside India, both of them are trained by them. And this is a ministry for skill upgradation. And it has also come out with several policy and programs which protects diaspora in the Gulf region from discrimination, exploitations, and mistreatment into that region. And therefore, the ministry formation, besides the diaspora regions, are also a competing political interest. Each party wants to prove itself that it is doing more for diaspora. So when the next political party comes to power, it removes the previous ministry, says, no, no, that's useless, I am bringing new ministry. So, but the point remains that across the political parties, there is a competing feeling to do more for diaspora.
Good evening. Besides the specific feeling of belong to the community of origin, could you identify some main elements of the feelings of Indian diaspora, which made the feeling of belong to the Indian nation?
Yes, yes. I think, as I was saying, that India is not a country of one religion. You have multiple religions. And you have, of course, majority of Hindu, around 82%, around 14% Muslim. All other religions are a smaller fragment. And in the diaspora, you have both. The old diaspora, which went from United India. But in 1947, when India got independence, there was also a very strong Islamic political group which didn't want to remain with India, and the Pakistan was created. And the British, on the day of independence, made one Pakistan and one India. And in India, though the Pakistan was created for Muslim, even today in India, there are more Muslims than Pakistan and Bangladesh put together in terms of number. So we have the world's second largest Muslim population after Indonesia. And most of them who went during colonial period, they went from United India, both Hindu and Muslim, and there is very strong pro-India feeling for them. They don't distinguish themselves as Hindu and Muslim. They call themselves Hindustani. And they link, even from Caribbean, most of the strong diaspora movement groups are led by Muslim for India Connect. Many of the Hindu temples, even in many African countries, Hindu Mahasabha, Hindu temple are funded by Muslim, and they lead that group. But the diaspora that went after independence has been influenced by the formation of a state of Pakistan. So there is a difference of Hindu and Muslim in that segment. But despite that, Indians, the Muslim also prefer India for various regions over Pakistan. It's a very tolerant, democratic, open society. You will never get that kind of freedom in Pakistan. And most of these Indians have another feeling, which is beyond the religious region, that wherever they are located, they are seen as Indian. They carry the Indianness on their face, that they are Indian, however big achiever or low achiever they are. And if India is not a strong nation, is not a respectable member of the world community, they also face that feeling. That means a strong India will bring more respect for them in their own community, which they have not enjoyed in the past. So there is a urge for them, intrinsic urge for them, to make India grow, to become stronger, because their identity is linked with India, whether Muslim or Hindu or Christian or Sikh.
We invite to all of you to come tomorrow for the last part of our session. Please give a little thank you for the professor. Bueno, los que deseen los invito a quedarse para escuchar a la compañera que va a hacer unas palabras. Los que no, pues ya pueden retirarse. Gracias.